Okay.
Welcome back to the O'Colly Sports postgame coverage. Chris Becker joined here with Ryan Breeden. The Cowboys fell to number 11 Texas, 77-74, second straight loss, out to an 0-2 start in Big 12 play. Ryan, what did you see tonight?
Um, I just saw pretty much exactly what Coach Boynton expressed as his concerns on Friday when he talked before the game. He talked about how he said something along the lines of, if you lined up every Texas and Oklahoma State player based off of sorting it from athleticism, maybe you'd get to your first Oklahoma State guy at fifth or sixth. So he was talking about how big of a concern the athleticism between Texas and Oklahoma State was, and it showed with the second chance points, the offensive rebounds, the block shots, all just like in general. I felt like Texas's athleticism really made a very big difference.
Right, and one of those changes that Coach Boynton made a couple changes in the starting lineup that hadn't been there all season. Avery Anderson got moved in, Matthew Alexander Moncrief moved in, and Farron Favors and Bernard Kuma moved out. Avery Anderson made the most of the chance. 11 points, 4 of 8 shooting, played fairly well. Ma played okay, shot poorly, but you can see him getting closer to getting comfortable in the position of Big 12 basketball. But what did you see from those changes, and how they help? Like what went right and what went wrong with those changes?
Well, so the first thing I'll say is with Avery Anderson, he made a big impact from the very beginning. I mean, Oklahoma State led for basically the entire first half, and they had a 5-point lead at halftime. And Avery Anderson made a very large impact. I mean, he was disruptive on the defensive end. He was quick. He was athletic. He was exactly what Coach Boynton was wanting in there. I think the big reason why he decided to start Avery Anderson and not Farron Flavors, for one, Farron struggling from what he does best, three-point line. He's struggling shooting so far to start the season. And then Avery presents a athletic ability that Farron just doesn't quite have in that aspect. And I think that it paid off pretty well. And I think for MA, he did a good job of getting to the rim, got a couple of good shots, had that and one in the second half when Oklahoma State was trying to come back, but it was just not enough to overcome a very talented Texas team on the road. And one thing I wanted to ask you about, Chris, is what did you think of just in general Texas's second half they played, and more specifically their 17-0 run?
Yeah, like it was mentioned in the post-game press conference just a second ago, opposing team runs have been pretty bad and brutal for Oklahoma State since dating back to last season. It just kind of continued today. Showed last game out against TCU with the 9-0 run in the game for the Horned Frogs, and the team just has to get better at stopping those runs and getting either getting defensive stops or matching them points for points. There was an exchange there at the end of the first half or mid to end of the first half where the teams just back to back trips. They're exchanging layups, and if teams are going to try to go on runs, you got to do that. You have to try to go on a runner yourself, and it comes down to defensive stops, which has been very difficult for Oklahoma State at points this season.
They were eventually able to go on something of their own run after that 17-0 run from Texas. I mean, they were down, I want to say 13 with about 5 or 6 minutes to go, and they were able to bring it back and ultimately get it to within 3 a couple of times in the last minute and a half. And most of that was led by Cade Cunningham, who once again just showed that he can turn it on late. But I mean, what do you think it is for Cade that's not allowing for him to turn it on earlier? Because Oklahoma State fans are seeing how good Cade Cunningham can be, but it's not for the full game. It's just either mostly near the end, honestly.
Yeah, I think Coach Boynton said it perfectly. I think he feels a little bit pressure on himself, which he doesn't necessarily need to put on himself. There's other guys on that team. There's other playmakers on that team that can pick up some of that load, and Cade has that takeover ability, which every superstar has. But he's got he's got to have it. It's got to be something that's turned on constantly, and not just at the end of the game. He has to be able to take the game over in the middle part, in the early part, and at the end. He's got to string together a nice, a full game. It's a 40-minute basketball game, and you can't just play for the last 10 minutes. And he hasn't played just last minute. He shows sparks on throughout the rest of the game. He's just some early struggles that this whole team has. It's been evident this entire season. Really, this team struggles to get
Yeah,
started. And
yeah,
once they get started, they're fairly good basketball team, but they just struggle to get going and get that initial spark. But once that initial spark strikes, it's up from the it's just up from there.
well, you
But
know who did have a very complete game and made the difference for Texas? Greg Brown. My
yeah,
goodness, he pretty much he was all over, just
mhm.
disruptive on the defensive end. On offense, he was getting second chance rebounds, layups. What did you see from Cade Cunningham's former AAU teammate Greg Brown?
Yeah, exactly what everyone expected to see from Greg Brown this season. I saw a lot of people on social media and stuff in general just like surprised Greg Brown had this game. The guy was a top 5 recruit also. He was a top recruit just like Kate Cunningham. So I'm not shocked. It was exactly what I expected from Greg Brown to do to any team. And 24 points, 14 rebounds. It's a pretty great game. That doesn't happen very often where you can go 20 and 14. So it's pretty great. It was incredible. It was an incredible thing to witness. And Texas had 3 guys who were over 15 points. 2 of them had over 20. OSU had 1 person
Yeah,
over 15, and it was Kate Cunningham who had 25. So I
yeah.
think
Andrew Jones had a great game.
yeah, Andrew Jones had he put up 22. Matt Coleman put up 15. Besides those 3 guys, everyone else was really shut down. But those 3 guys carried Texas to this victory, and you know it it was almost a 3-on-5 game at that point. They had 2 other bodies on the floor playing defense, but offensively it was those 3 guys, and OSU just couldn't quite get a handle on them.
One of the things I wanted to ask you about, Chris, a very pivotal, well, in hindsight, very pivotal moment was when Cade Cunningham went up for a layup, got what it looked like got hit on the hand. There was no call, and so Cade and some of the OSU sideline had some displeasure with that, and Cade ended up getting a technical. And so you take away what could have been an and one free throw, and Texas gets 2 technical free throws, and that's a 3-point swing. And I mean, ultimately, when you look in hindsight, 77-74 win for Texas. That's 3 points right there. So what did you think of that exchange?
I mean, in hindsight, hindsight's 2020, but you know, I didn't see the play. I was listening to it on the radio, so I don't know what happened. I didn't see the exchange, but I mean, there's been some time that Cade's been very angry with some calls not getting calls, and especially under the rim, and you know it happens. But that technical was very extremely pivotal now looking back at it. And like you said, you take those 3. I mean, I think you said everything I would say. You take those 3 points away, or you take those 2 points away and say, oh, she gets that and one. It's 75-75 game right there.
Right. And I
So
mean, the free throws are obviously not guaranteed. And for OSU, free throws have been an area where it's been a little bit shaky in certain spans of time. I mean, today, granted, they went 8 for 11 in the second half from the line, but overall in the game they went 13 of 21. That's not a very efficient performance from the free throw line.
right, like I said earlier, it's a 40-minute basketball game, and only making free throws for the last 20 minutes of it. What about all those points you left on the board the first 20 minutes? Or it just free throws are an extremely important part of of basketball games, and especially when you're one possession games like this, every free throw matters. So,
And I mean, I don't
well,
really have much else to say. The one last thing I have, just in general, just OSU fans, Cowboy fans, just I think they should just be patient with this group. You know what I mean? Like they're a young team. They lost. Granted, they lost at home to TCU in the conference opener, but TCU is a pretty good team. You know what I mean? They've got some athleticism. They got some height. They've got some good shooters, and so and then also going on the road to a top 11 team and losing by 3, like that's also something that's very encouraging. I mean, there's good things that you can take away from every game. You know what I mean? And
yeah,
it's not like, as Coach Boynton said, in his post-game conference a few minutes ago, it's not like they're getting run out of the gym.
Right.
You're talking about two one possession losses in your first two games to one pretty decent team, a very good team when you look at how, like, if they're projected to be the ninth best team in the Big 12, TCU is a very good ninth best team in the
Yeah.
conference. You know what
Big
I mean? And
Big
then
12 basketball is no joke this season, and they could very easily be 6 to 7 Big 12 teams in the NCAA tournament in March, and the Cowboys could be one, but they definitely have to step on the gas. And it. Well, if you look at it, OSU had three freshmen play, two start, and then two grad transfers who are in their first year at the program play. So this team's very new, like very new together, and
yep.
they're young, and so it'll come. It'll spark up, and this stretch of games is not easy for Oklahoma State by
Oh
any.
no, it's absolutely brutal. I mean, they've got a 13-day stretch of off days coming up, and those will be very, very nice to
Yeah,
have
yeah,
before you have
you
Texas Tech and West Virginia.
right. You just played TCU. You played TCU a couple nights ago. You just played number 11 Texas. You got this 13-day window to get ready to put those two losses behind and move on to number 14 Texas Tech in Lubbock, and then back in Stillwater against number 8 West Virginia, and then you have K State, and then you have number 5 Kansas. So
It's just insane. It really is. And
Big
I
12
mean, and then you've
basketball is
got
very hard.
Bedlam. And
Big
then
12
you've got
basketball is
Bedlam. So that's another break. You've got Bedlam, which is another like one game. But it's not even really a break. That's a rivalry game. So you know
oh,
how
yeah.
those games are pretty much close all the time.
Mhm.
So that's not going to be an easy one by any stretch of the imagination. And then right after that, you've got West Virginia on the road, and then you've got number 2 Baylor. So I mean, you're really talking your next 7 games, really. You've got 5 against ranked teams and not low ranked teams. We're talking like top
Top
15
15
teams.
teams, yeah.
And then you've got 2 games against Kansas State. And granted, Kansas State's not very good. Kansas State is not in the best situation right now. But then the other one against the unranked team is OU. So it really doesn't get any easier. Hopefully this
Right.
13-day stretch is able to help them just regroup and maybe I feel like they just don't need to think too much about this. You know what I mean? They're a young team. They're performing well. I think it's just one of those of it'll come eventually. Just for the meantime, just be patient.
Right. Yeah. All right. For the Ocala, this has been the Ocala Sports basketball recap. Once again, Oklahoma State fell 77-74 to number 11 Texas. They'll be back in action on January 2nd, again in Lubbock against number 14 Texas Tech and Chris Beard. The Cowboys went in last year and beat the Red Raiders in Lubbock. They're going to look to have to do it again to stop from falling to 0-3.